What's going on, everybody? Welcome to today's video, reacting to How Much Do Touring Musicians Get Paid in Nashville by Nikki V. So what's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be reacting to How Much Do Touring Musicians Get Paid, Nashville, by Nikki V. As always, everybody, if you're not already subscribed to Nikki V, please go and do so right now. Also, I've put the link of the original video in the description. Please go and give the original video a like as well. And on this video, my video, leave a comment on what you'd like to see me react to next. So now, let's get to it.
Hey gang, welcome back to the channel. My name's Nikki V. I'm a studio musician here in Nashville, so I play on people's records. And I teach here on YouTube. I teach privately as well. And I also tour with a couple different country acts. Over the last 2 years, I've been trying to kind of gather data for this very specific video. And that's how much people make that are on tours or on major tours, like on bus gigs. And it's not something you can Google search, and that's difficult because like any other profession you're thinking about getting into, right? Like say you're, in high school and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life. If you're like, okay, let's see what, engineers make, and you Google it, or architects or whatever. You can usually kind of find a ballpark salary of what you can expect, to get out of that job if you're going to put the time into learning that skill set.
Yes.
But music's not like that. You can't Google search what Taylor Swift's guitar player makes. It just doesn't work like that. So hopefully
that is so incredibly true. And then I think that comes down to the one main rule that I always knew about music and why us as musicians don't get paid that well. And it's a very hard truth for a lot of people. Are you ready? A musician's want to be heard will always outweigh their want to be paid. So even though I don't know very much exactly about how top tier musicians like, Nikki was saying, Taylor Swift's guitar player, I don't know exactly how much they'd be getting paid, but the reason why it's not that much is because there's a huge pool of young, fantastic musicians that will take that very, very low payment in order to be on stage in front of 20,000 or more people. That's why it's impossible to Google search.
in this video, I can help you guys kind of get a better understanding of what you can expect to make if you're on a bus gig with a household name kind of act. Also, I wanted to make a little note that before I shot this video, I texted a few of my friends just to make sure I wasn't too far off the mark on the numbers, right? Because I was like, I don't want to be talking about something and then, the comment section below be like, oh, I heard this guy pays that and that guy pays that. I'm not here to call out specific artists or anything like that. I'm just trying to give you guys just a general idea. And I checked with the most in-the-know people that I know within my network, and I think these numbers are relatively accurate. So I appreciate you guys hanging out. If you're into this kind of stuff, please hit the like and subscribe. Let's get into it. So the best way to break this down is actually by era. And I've noticed that there's a certain trend between legacy acts, 2000s acts, and then like your modern day artists that have broken recently that are kind of at the top of the charts and crushing it on stadiums. And I'll break down each one of those three. And the first one to start with is kind of like that 90s era legacy act kind of gig, which would be like the Rebas, the Alan Jacksons, those kind of, the Garth Brooks, those kind of acts. And I play with a country band called Shenandoah. They had 13 number ones, Grammys, the whole 9 yards. I got a plaque over here on the wall for one we had last year with Luke Combs.
Nice. And
Shenandoah treats me really well. They pay a little above what most of the acts are paying, and that's really nice. Actually, quite a bit above what most of the acts are paying. And I've been very fortunate to have that gig, and I have nothing but good things to say about that whole organization. It's a really good bunch, and I love the guys I'm on the road with. So I've been fortunate, but not everybody has. And the legacy acts tend to take pretty good care of their musicians. And so like on a typical show day, like most of those gigs are on show pay days, so you get paid just for that day you're actually playing. You don't get a salary for the year or anything like that. And most of them are between $300 to $500 a show. And There's outliers above and below that, obviously, right? But this is just kind of like the meat and potatoes where the majority of the herd is at. And if you get
So about $300 to $500 per show. And like he said, that's for a legacy act, a more established act like Reba or Garth Brooks or something like that. People are shocked. They see a lot of musicians, like especially the side musicians, and they think that they're rich, think that they're be pulling up in limos. No. Reba pulls up in the limo. Garth Brooks pulls up in the limo. You pull up in a bus or a taxi cab or a broken down van, and you know, those musicians generally make, like he said, between $300 and $500 per night. From what I've heard and what I used to know going back a ways, that's gotten quite a bit better actually for the side musicians. And again, this all boils down to the fact that there will always be fantastic quality musicians that'll be fantastic and young that can take being out on the road that will do it for that price and lower. Because don't forget, the main thing the musicians want to be heard will outweigh their want to be paid. Always, always, always.
get into kind of like the really huge acts from like the 90s and early 2000s, mostly the 90s, like the Rebas, the Garth Brooks, the Alan Jacksons, they're taking really, really good care of their guys. And so that pay goes up much higher, up to like the 1,500 range on some of those gigs. And not those artists specifically, just those mega artists from that generation.
The megas.
And they should, because back then they were crushing it with CD sales, you know, and actually like physical sales and merch and giant tours. And so they had the income to support all that. And the business was just different then. And I think, you know, they took really good care of their people back then, and that just kind of spilled into today as well. And a lot of those acts will take studio musicians down the road with them too. And so if you look at some of the really big acts from that decade, their bands that are on stage with them are not, you know, the long-haired, super cool, rocking out kind of guys. They're studio musicians that are just incredible monster players with feel, tone, the whole 9 yards. And that's just what those artists expect at that stage in their career. And they have the budget to get a studio guy, because most studio guys have successful careers in town and families and stuff. They don't want to be on the road 100 dates a year. A lot of these legacy artists aren't playing 100 dates a year. You know, they're doing 40 shows and hosting award shows and doing things like that, and appearances or private events that just pay ridiculous money. And they can afford to hire a top shelf studio band to go and play, you know, 25 shows a year with them. It's a great decade to play for, and I've been really fortunate to be in there as well. And the fans are wonderful, so it's a good deal. And like I said,
that's good.
Let me like reemphasize this. There's prices are all over the map. This is just that $300 to $500 range a day is where most of them I see are at. That kind of 90s legacy decade artist. Another little thing on that is that a lot of these bigger artists from that decade might put their musicians.
Okay, so it's still generally $300 to $500 a night for most of the legacy artists, with the exception of the huge superstars like Garth and Reba. They can get, you know, like you said, up to $1,500, but that's better than what it used to be from what I remember. And again, you know, anybody that knows me or has been watching this channel enough, I do have road experience, but not with national sign acts or anything like that. No, I did it like a starving artist, like most of the people watching this did. I, for the most part, played bars, restaurants, and pubs, and done some touring and stuff like that, but nothing on this level at all myself. But I do know a lot of people that have done a lot of those gigs, and what they were telling me, they were getting paid going way back when. And yeah, it's gotten, from the sounds of it, a little bit better. A little bit better.
On salaries. And so basically whenever the phone rings, they just ask that you're available. And that's really nice because you get this guaranteed chunk of money for the year. And then outside of that, you can go and, you know, do other sessions, play little shows around town, do whatever you want, as long as it doesn't conflict with your main salaried gig. Or you can just sit on the couch and chill. So that's a pretty sweet deal for those that have it. And those gigs are few and far between, right? And you have to have a very elite skill set to get that kind of work. It's possible. And the gigs are out there. So the next one we're going to look at is moving on to like the early 2000s artist. In my opinion, this is a great decade to play for. And the reason I say that is because they're still rolling at a pretty big level, right? Like your Luke Bryan, Jason Aldean, little big town kind of gigs. Those ones, they're rolling really comfortable, right? They got multiple buses, a lot of them, and the musicians are taken care of really well, not just financially, but you know, the hotels they're staying at are always really nice. They'll do residencies in Vegas and things like that, and these guys are crushing it. And those artists crushed it back in the 2000s because you still had CD sales happening and merch and just insane cash flow coming in all the time in the industry at that era. And so the musicians, it trickled down to them, and they still get taken care of very well. And what I'm seeing mostly within that range is 450 to 800 a day. So 800 being towards the top of it,
bad.
450 being towards the bottom of it. And there's outliers above and below, like I said. But for the most part, that's what I'm seeing. And a lot of those acts as well will put their musicians on salaries from 60 to 85 grand, somewhere in there, if they're doing 85 to 110 shows a year, something along those lines. And so that's good money. You know, they're getting $1,000 a show at that kind of rate for the salary, and then they can go and do other work outside of it, like I said in the previous little segment. So I think the early 2000s, just the 2000s, is a great decade to play for financially and your comfort level on the road. Okay, now
It's still just kind of, I understand why in the business, you know what, people are there to see whoever that star is. You're just the side musician, but you're on stage and you're thinking, hey, you know, I'm making like $1,000 a night. That's great money. The guy standing right over there is making 10 grand, 15 grand, 20 grand. Yep, that's the way she goes. If you're a side musician, if you're a session musician, that's just the way it goes. Again, not to be the broken record, musicians want to be heard, will always outweigh their want to be paid. These side guys like him and everybody else get to tour around and play in front of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. Not everybody gets that opportunity, so willing to accept a lot more, you know, a lot less than the person sitting next to you, because you kind of have to, because if you know, no, I want more money than that. Okay, next. We'll just call one of the other 8,000 people that we got on a list that can do this gig. So yeah, still just crazy just to think about it.
now we get into the segment that might be a little bit shocking for some. So this was shocking for me, and I didn't realize this honestly until like maybe a year and a half ago. And if you look at like the huge acts that are out there right now, like giant acts that are playing stadiums, and there's pyro and all these crazy Instagram posts you're seeing from the musicians, they are getting paid, not all the time, but most of them very, very little for that. And so like I've friends of mine that are on tours that are giant tours, like in Australia and all over Europe and South America, flying around, and they're literally getting paid $150 or $200 a show, which is less than you'd make playing on Broadway, you know, and then you get to sleep in your own bed. And then some are doing a little bit better and getting paid closer to $500 or maybe $600 a show.
And I heard about a lot of road gigs like this. Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense. And from some of the road stuff that I did, again, wasn't in any sort of national act that had anything like that, but one of the biggest gigs that I ever did, it was actually in Texas for a freedom festival that had a good chunk of military that just came back for their first, you know, stay back from the second Iraq war. I think that was Desert Storm was the first one. The last Iraq war, when they went to go get Saddam Hussein. And we played there, and at one point, it must have been at least 15,000 people at that side of the base that we were playing for. I made $55 for that show. Now, we go back home off the road. I'm no longer with that band. I'm playing a solo loop station gig at a biker bar on a Wednesday night with $4 pitcher of beer night. Not $4 beer night, $4 pitcher of beer night. I make $250 down the street from my apartment. And just like he said, then you can sleep in your own bed. It's unbelievable how it works. You would think that even on the smallest level of being a side musician with big touring acts, you would be able to make more than the little bit of money that you would make locally, at least a little bump above that for all the traveling and downtime. Nope, there's quite a few gigs like that. If you're really young and you really want the experience, yes, take some of those gigs. But if you're trying to support a family and you're older, it's just a huge no. What? It's just there's no, you can't do a gig like that. It's not a good idea.
But that range is literally like 150 to 500, and most of what I'm seeing is more down towards the 150 to 250 kind of range. You know, if they're young and don't have that many bills, they can go out and do that stuff. That's cool, you know, and it looks great on Instagram, looks wonderful on all your social media. But for me personally, that just doesn't work financially. I have too many responsibilities around here, and you know, a lot of those acts are gone a lot too. So that, you know, they're out, you know, 175 dates a year, so they're never in town, which is not great for your networking, and they're not getting paid a whole lot to go do that. But if you have like, you know, a couple of roommates and you're just moved to town, and you luck in one of those gigs, and that's great. Another thing I wanted to mention is how pay works on travel days. So some acts will actually pay you for the time you're gone, not just when you're on stage, right? So say you have a gig that's on a Saturday in Texas. Say it's like way out in like West Texas, and you're in Nashville. You're going to have to leave a day early to get there in time for sound check, depending on if it's a festival date, if there's other acts, you have to sound check early. And then you have to travel all the way home. They drive throughout the night, but still you're missing, you know, you're going to be gone at least 48 hours for that. But a lot of acts only pay you for one day. Some acts will pay like half day on travel days. So like say you're on a tour and you're playing Thursday, you're off Friday, and then playing Saturday. They'll give you like half show pay on Thursday. Good acts will. Some acts won't. But it just depends on management or if they're old school or not. But that's something to consider as well when you're looking at this. So long story short, if you're in the legacy kind of stage, they're between 300 to 500 a show. If you're in the 2000s decade, they're looking at maybe 400 or 450 to 800 a show. And then if you're on the new, like crushing it, you know, crazy stadium tour thing with a new artist, it can be anywhere from 150 to 500 or 600, but usually towards the lower end of that. So all that being said, it's kind of interesting that you can have an elite skill set because, right, these people that are doing this are really in the 1%. Like if you think about all the musicians, you know, in the world, think about all the amazing musicians in the world, what percentage of them actually get to get on a tour bus and go play a show for tens of thousands of people? It's less than 1%. Like,
as well, in this case, especially what he's talking about, it's also about three things. Just like real estate. Location, location, location. These are people that are in Nashville that get called for these gigs. Nashville's got its own circuit, its own scene. A fantastic player from Chicago is not going to get some call to go into a gig with a Nashville act. He's not there. He's not close by. He can't just hop on the bus and here we go. Unless it's somebody that's got a huge name, but for the most part, I understand what he's saying. Only the really good musicians can do it, but you have to actually be in Nashville in order to make this really happen as well, too. You got to be close by because a lot of those tours, those bands and acts aren't touring constantly. They'll do a few months, a little while, then they'll come back to town, and then you got to be there to be able to be accessible to hop on the next tour, get to the next gig. So I understand what he means, but in this particular location, that's where I'm interjecting as well, too. It depends on if you're actually one of the cats that's in Nashville.
100%, it's less than 1%. And so that's an elite skill set. And usually that doesn't equal elite pay in our world, but in the real world or most normal jobs, it does. If you're within 1% of any other field, you're going to be doing really, really well salary-wise or financially or however you look at it. For some reason, the music industry, it's just not that way. You have to be more creative and have different revenue streams coming in and more than one thing happening. Being on a big tour, though, is a very powerful psychological tool you can use to your advantage. So, you know, I was playing on records and had some really cool album credits and things happening before I even took off with Shenandoah. But the minute I started touring with Shenandoah, my hometown literally put it on the news, right? I was playing the Grand Ole Opry with them, and they put my engagement that week on the news as well, which is hilarious. So proposed my wife, played the opera.
And that is why session work inside people get paid so little. And I'm not saying anything bad about Nicky for doing this at all. Hell no. He's living the dream, man. But, you know, that is why that pay is that way, because they just want to do those gigs. Like, can you blame him for wanting to play the Grand Ole Opry? Can you blame him for wanting to do a tour where he's up in front of 20,000 or more people at a time. You kind of can't blame him. But, you know, that's why it'll always be that way pay-wise for studio musicians, side musicians, hired gun touring musicians forever.
Opry and the news station puts it up. So everybody freaks out when you start playing for an act that they know in your hometown, right? And you get a lot of respect around town too. It's an interesting thing that happens. You're out there making decent money, not crazy money, but it carries this huge weight. Everybody thinks you're kind of like, you know, hometown famous. And you can use that to your advantage, like I said. So my original plan, whenever I went on the road, because I was recording full time before, I was a student at my house, you know, emailing tracks back and forth during COVID. And I got the call for the Shenandoah gig. But my plan was to actually play for a 90s act like Shenandoah, then leverage that into an early 2000s act, and then hopefully move on to like a huge stadium gig with a modern current country artist. And I was going to use those 3 credits to leverage more recording work. And I was going to do that through a website that I'm building right now called NashvilleTracking.com.
Just like building any other kind of resume for any other type of job. In a lot of ways, being a professional musician is not at all like any other day job, but in a lot of ways, it is. You see what he's talking about there? He's building a musical resume. He's letting people know that not only can he play and perform, but he's got experience touring on this sort of level and knows how to do it. That part is just the same as anything else. Got to network, baby. Got to work that resume.
And it was going to be basically Europe and Australia's access to Nashville studio musicians, or basically anywhere. If you're not in Nashville, if you want to hire the best drummer, bass player, guitar players, everybody. I'm building the website for that right now. But I was going to use those credits. You know, it's like, say you're, 25 and you live in Germany and you like country music. Okay, you might love the fact that I played for some huge current artist, or if you're 60 years old, you might really be like, oh man, he played for Shenandoah. I love 2 Dozen Roses and Church on the Cumberland Road. And so I wanted to have those decades kind of span so I could kind of appeal to a wider audience online, because it's really easy to sell those credits. It's really impressive because most people don't know what it pays to begin with, right? But the plan changed whenever I realized that I couldn't justify going out for $200 on a major stadium tour, risk that, even if it looked amazing on social media and I could leverage that into more work. Still, bottom line, it didn't make sense financially. And so I had to adapt my plan. So I toured with Shenandoah for 2 years, and they've been absolutely wonderful to me. They pay more than they should. They're paying above market value on most of those 90s country artists, right? They're paying above that.
Nice.
They're a really good organization to work for. Love Mike and Marty. I love everybody on that bus. But I'm actually resigning in July. And I'm launching the website anyways, NashvilleTracking.com. And I'm just going to do studio work full-time here in town because I've been doing more tracking sessions as well lately. And I want to be around. Me and my wife are wanting to start a family and all that. So I'm trying to kind of, lay the bricks to kind of build a solid foundation here in Nashville. That's kind of the plan. And if somebody calls to go fill out on the road, I'll do that because it's fun to go out. It's super fun playing on a big stage and feeling the energy of 15,000 people singing every lyric back at you if you've played for an artist that has songs like that. And that's a really powerful feeling, and there's nothing that compares to that. It's a great feeling. That's why a lot of people do it. It just feels good, even if no matter what money you're making. Some people just love it.
He's basically just saying the point that I was going over time after time again. Absolutely. That's why people go out and do those gigs for $150 to $250 a night, even though you can get paid the same amount to play on a Wednesday at the biker bar for $4 pitcher of beer night. It's kind of just a little bit more fun to do it in front of 15,000 people that are singing a chorus to a song while you're on stage. Just a little bit more on the fun side. Just that much.
That's why people get into music in the first place, right? They get into it because they love it. Nobody gets in the music industry thinking, I'm going to do this to be rich, nope. Right? But it is possible to make money at this and be successful. You just have to be smart about it and kind of, choose your camp wisely. But I hope you guys found this video helpful. and are interesting or insightful. If you did, please like and subscribe. I'll put the little button over my shoulder here. And I do a bunch of private lessons as well. So if you're interested in that, if you like some of my lesson videos on the channel, just go to my Instagram. It's Nicky V Music and shoot me a message on there. I do a bunch of teaching. I probably have 10 to 15 students weekly that I kind of cycle through, and some just come when they need it. You don't have to buy a lesson package or anything like that. Just try to do whatever's best for you at this point in your career to help you out. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right. That was reacting to How Much Do Touring Musicians Get Paid? Nashville by Nicky V. Okay, once again, everybody, if you haven't already subscribed to Nicky V, go and give Nicky V a sub. Also, go to the original video. I've got the link in the description. Give the original video a like. And on this video, my video, leave a comment on what you'd like to see me react to next. Thanks for checking out this video. If you like what you saw, please subscribe, click the notification bell, like, comment, and share. It doesn't cost a thing and would really help out the channel. Also, please subscribe to my other channel, GK Mac Music, for some live looping live streams with a side of jackassery, some original music, and some short content, also with a side of jackassery. If you'd like to help out the channel financially, you can buy some merch at the merch store, or you can become a channel member. As always, everyone, thanks so much for your continued support. Do what makes you happy.